to the New Testament and look at the words of the Master. The words of the Master. This week's words of the Master, we're going to be looking at a few portions. Matthew 26, 1 through 13, Mark 14, 1 through 9, Luke 22, 1 through 8, and John 12, 1 through 8. And we'll be talking about this anointing of Yeshua. This anointing of Yeshua. I want to, primarily look at, let's just read through Matthew 26, 1 through 13. And then, because they're mostly the same, we'll go and we'll kind of look at some of the other accounts to see where there's added information. And we'll talk about a few things. So if we go to Matthew 26, let's read 1 through 13.
Matthew 26, and it came to be, when Yeshua ended all these words, he said to his top ones, you know that after 2 days, Pesach takes place, and the son of Adam is to be delivered up to be impaled. Then the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people came together at the court of the high priest, who was called Cleophas, and plotted to seize Yeshua by trickery and killed him. But they said, not at the festival, lest there be an uproar among the people. And when Yeshua was at Beth Ayan, at the house of Shimeon the leper, a woman came to him, having an alabaster flask of costly perfume, and she poured it on his head, and he sat at the table. And when his top ones saw it, they were much displeased, saying, to what purpose is this waste? For the perfume could have been sold for much and given to the poor. However, when Yeshua noticed it, he said to them, why do you trouble a woman? For she has done a good work toward me. For you always have the poor with you, but me you do not have always. For in pouring this perfume on my body, she did it for my burial. Truly I say to you, whoever this good news is proclaimed in all the world, what this woman has done shall be spoken of also to her remembrance.
All right, very good. So if we go back again, we'll have to go over and look at some of these other instances. But first we'll look over at Matthew 26, verse 1. After Yeshua, 24, 25, we just looked at some of the kind of apocalyptic sayings that Yeshua went through. He kind of dealt with these various issues that had to do with, the end times, the world to come, his return. And then so now, as he's talking with his disciples, he brings it back to the present, for them, of course. And the fact that his time on earth, as they knew it, was coming to an end. And that his death was, in fact, imminent. At this point, he's kind of been hinting at bringing up the fact that he has to die. And so here, he's doing it again. And there's a few things that we want to pay attention to here. If we look over in verse 2, can you read verse 2 again for us?
You know that after 2 days, the Pesach takes place, and the son of Adam is to be delivered up to be impaled.
Okay, very good. So there's two things that we want to consider here. First, the fact that the timing of what was going to happen, he's going to die, the timing that it is, and not only that, but the fact, not only the time that it is, but also the fact of the thing that was going to happen, which was, in fact, his death. So his death, the timing, it was Passover time. Approaching at this point. At this point when this is being spoken, it says that they were 2 days away from Pesach. If we looked at Mark 14 and 1. Let's look at Mark 14 and 1. Luke says the same thing. We could just look at Mark 14 and 1.
Now the Pesach and the festival of Mitzvot was after 2 days. The chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to take through treachery and put him to death.
Okay, so you have this thing going on with the, ever since from before, whenever he said the thing about the from the Psalms as it related to the sitting on the right hand and all of this, all the people they wanted, they're ready to kill him at this point. His time of, secrecy, my time has not yet come kind of a thing. All of those things are done. And the people, they're ready to kill him. But what we want to pay attention to here is that, like in verse 1 of Mark 14, where it says, now the Pesach and the festival of Matzot was 2 days away. And again, so in Matthew don't mention the Feast of Unleavened Bread. He just says Pesach. He just says Passover. Now from a biblical standpoint, Passover, from a biblical standpoint, what the Bible actually says is, it talks about Passover, and the way that is described, it's a moment or a period of time. It's the time that the lamb is slain. It's the time between the high noon and sunset. That period of time in a day, on the 14th of Abib, that the lamb was slain. And then the extended period was the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And so there's something to recognize on the 14th of Abib, but it's really just kind of the preparation for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But at the time, in history, at the time, they're literally calling the whole thing Passover. And we kind of do it too. We come to that time, we know that it's the Feast of Unleavened Bread, but we kind of just call it Passover. Which is kind of what the people kind of traditionally got to. Is that time, the whole time, though, the whole 7 days, not 8 days, the whole 7 days, they called it Passover. And so what was about to happen, he said what was about to happen. He was about to be impaled. He was going to be crucified. The timing, at least as far as right here, like they didn't know that it too was going to happen at Passover, but they did know that it was going to happen soon. And at that point, it was 2 days before Passover.
Now we're past over season.
Basically, here at this time, I don't know if it was from this time all the way up until now, but at this time, there was a Passover season, and now it's the same kind of a thing. And so when we see over there the word Pesach, this word that is translated as Passover, when looked at, it could be talking about the whole time, that whole week, that whole 7-day period. But also, and I think more technically speaking, Passover is the actual sacrifice. It's the sacrifice of the lamb that happened and initiates the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Let's look at Exodus 12 and 21. Exodus 12 and 21.
Exodus 12 and 21. And Moshe called for all the elders of Israel and said to them, get out and take lambs for yourselves according to your clans and slay the Pesach.
And slay the Pesach. You can't slay days. You can't slay a time period. What you can slay is the lamb, and what they were speaking about, that's the sacrifice that would be slayed. And so, from the original Passover, kind of the star, I don't know, the main ingredients of the Feast of Unleavened Bread was this lamb, was this sacrifice. And so when we look at Matthew and we look at Mark, the way that they're using Passover, they kind of use it in such a way where it denotes the sacrifice, but Luke really does. If we go over to Luke, let's look at Luke. Let's look at Luke 22, 7 and 8.
Luke 22, 7. And the day of unleavened bread came when the Pesach had to be slaughtered. And he sent Kepha and Yohanan, saying, go and prepare the Pesach for us to eat.
Oh, right there. See, where he says, go and prepare the Pesach, the Passover, the sacrifice for us to eat. And so again, when we think about this kind of just we can go back to Matthew. If we go back to Matthew 26, again, there's kind of two things here for us to think about. First of all, it's this time moving up towards Pesach, and again, they're calling the whole thing Pesach because of but essentially Pesach is the sacrifice of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which here Yeshua is interesting for us to think about in verse 2, where he literally says, after 2 days it will be Pesach, and the Son of Man is to be delivered up to be impaled, is what he says. Crucified. I want to talk about this connection here that only John really kind of accentuates. Not the beloved disciple John, but John the Baptist. If we go back to John 1, 35 and 36. Let's look at that.
Said what?
John 1, 35 and 36.
It says again, the following day, Yohanan was standing with two of his top ones, and looking at Yeshua walking, he said, "See the Lamb of Elohim."
The Lamb of Elohim. The Lamb of Elohim. This is something that John the Baptist points out. And it's a thing that is really kind of unique to John the Baptist. In terms of this description of Yeshua. Speaking of Yeshua, and this is dealing with Yeshua when he first, is revealed, and dealing with him and calling him the Lamb of Elohim. And so when we think about, again, this timing that Yeshua said, 2 days is about to be the Passover, and the Son of Man is going to be killed, impaled, crucified, he's basically telling them that he's going to be killed at Passover. 2 days. But John, the immerser, refers to Yeshua as the Lamb of Elohim, as if he has some revelation in regards to what it is that is really the main purpose of Yeshua, to be that sacrificial lamb of Elohim. When we think about the great redemption of Israel, you can't not think about Passover. You must think about the blood of the lamb that detours the death angel. And so the connection that exists between Passover and the death of Yeshua, these things kind of go hand in hand. The Passover lamb being this sacrifice that you sacrifice, and your home, gains protection over the death angel coming. It is the means by which redemption and atonement are received. But also Yeshua. And so we have kind of the herald of Yeshua, the one that pronounces the coming of Yeshua, and in his pronouncing he refers to Yeshua as the Lamb of Elohim, which again, he's really the only one who uses this vernacular. And so as we were just talking about Isaiah 53, let's go over to Isaiah 53. Because the Lamb of Elohim is not mentioned in Isaiah 53, but it's explained. It's mentioned, it's not mentioned, but it's explained. If we look at Isaiah 53 and start reading at verse 4.
That truly he has borne our sickness and carried our pains, yet we reckon him smitten, stricken by Elohim, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgression, he was crushed for our crookedness. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and his stripes we are healed. By his stripes we are healed. We all, like sheep, went astray. Each one of us has turned to his own way. And Yahweh has laid on him the crookedness of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, but did not open his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shears is silent. but he did not open his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment. And as for his generation, who considered that he should not be cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken, and he was appointed a burial site with the wrong, and with the rich of his death, because he had done no violence, nor was deceit in his mouth. But Yahweh was pleased to crush him. He laid sickness on him, that when he made himself an offering for guilt, he would see the seed, he would prolong his days, and the pleasure of Yahweh prospered in his hand. He would see the result of the suffering of his life and be satisfied. Through his knowledge, my righteous servant makes many righteous, and he bears their crookedness. Therefore I give him a portion among the great, and he divides the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his being unto death, and he was counted with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors.
Okay, very good. So this thing that is being described is what is provided by the Lamb of Elohim. Even though it don't say Lamb of Elohim, it's talking about this sacrifice that is being made that takes away the transgressions from man. Where he bears the crookedness of the people and makes many righteous. And so these are the results of the Lamb of Elohim. And then so I'm saying that John the Baptist makes the connection where he talks about Yeshua as the sacrificer, the sacrificed of Elohim, that takes away the sin of the world. And so John the Baptist, again, is the only one that talks about Yeshua as the Lamb of Elohim. And then we see over here in Matthew 26, if we go back to Matthew 26, Yeshua now says, 2 days is Passover, and I'm going to be killed. And so we see that connection between the Passover and Yeshua as the Passover. All right, so let's keep on going. Let's go back to Matthew. We read.
So the other ones, there's no reaction in any of the other Gospels to say.
No. There's no reaction. No, there's no reaction. Mark, Matthew was what we read. Mark, no. They go straight over to this other thing that happens, and they talk briefly about what the chief priests were doing, but there's no kind of response to like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, there's none of that. Because I feel like they're not, like, we can look at this and say, well, he said there's in 2 days is the Passover. Oh yeah, and by the way, the Son of Man will be delivered up and impaled. So him saying that in one sentence, I guess there's a way that you could look at it where maybe there's two things being described and maybe the two things aren't kind of chronological. Maybe they're separate. I'm saying there's probably a way to look at that, which they probably did, where they're not really understanding how soon Yeshua ain't gonna be with them anymore. And so I think that's an interesting point, because there is a discernment that is necessary that his closest disciples don't have. At this time. They're kind of just living their situation, their life, and not really discerning the times as they should.
I don't know if this is off topic. If it is, you can just say we'll talk about something another time. But you brought up you took away the sins of the earth. So I just met somebody a few days ago, and they were bringing this stuff up to me, and they were basically saying like the world is justified because of that. I was not really buying that, but how do we? I mean, it does say it takes away the sins of the earth. How do we talk about that in English? Or Hebrew?
So think about it as if the means by which we are justified has taken place by what he did. But everybody don't take part in that justification unless but by faith in him. And so he creates this golden ticket. But you got to receive the golden ticket in order to receive the blessings, the entry into the place,
Into the kingdom of heaven.
into the kingdom, into the chocolate factory, right? And so what he did happened once and for all, right? But until you put your faith in what he did, it don't apply to you. And so the perversion is where, as you witness, I guess talking to this person, where they make it be like, well, yeah, he died for my sin already. There's nothing else that I have to do. Well, you have to, again, if we think about the Passover lamb, it's just like saying, well, it was necessary for you to kill the Passover lamb and put the blood on your doorpost. So that person is like unto someone who never puts the blood on the doorpost, but recognizes that it needs to be done, but never did it. Like there's a thing that you got to do to apply that justification to you.
I think he was big on like the predestined thing, like maybe I think it was the community, and maybe it's words he was using, and he is on that page. It was just hard for me because I know what I believe. It was hard for me to understand it because he kept on showing me scripture where he says all. He said, "Does that mean some?" I was like, "No, it does mean all." And I'm like, "But what are you saying? There's not two different people." He kept on saying like you're predestined. I think he was saying like if you fall away, he wasn't predestined anyway. I guess I can get with that, but it's still a little confusing in that term.
Yeah.
I would say I would agree with you.
Yeah, I mean that as a
Yes,
sentence,
I did.
that as a sentence
Still,
makes sense, but I'm just saying that it's not.
I had to still.
There has to be a distinction has to be made between what he did and how it applies to you.
Yeah.
Like it don't apply to everyone until they make it apply to them through faith in what he did.
If you don't believe, you have a choice.
Well,
I was like, I don't know. It says choose this day. You
yeah,
serve.
yeah. I mean, again, it's kind of this thing where, you know, if the right words are spoken, I could agree with that. You know what I mean?
He was older.
Yeah, I mean, if you put all the right words in, I can agree with that as a statement. Because it's kind of like when you, like, if it, like, predestination is an interesting thing, but the way that is spoken about in the scripture is based on foreknowledge. And so if the Most High has predestined you to be a certain way, he's predestined you based on the fact that he already knows what you'll do. And so if he already knows what you'll do, then it could be declared that it doesn't matter what life shows, you're always going to get to that end result. You're always going to eventually make that right choice. But it's going to be because of the right choice that you make. It's not going to be based on him making you do a thing. It's going to be based on him knowing that you're going to have specific responses to life, and at the end of the day, you're going to be over there. And so, you know, predestination is something that's talked about, but how are you talking about it is the question.
I think he is along the lines of the Calvinist thinking, whereas I would kind of classify when we believe on the Arminian thinking, where we have a choice in that process. You know, Calvinism is like
it's irresistible grace. But it's not based on your will. It's based on His will, and so you don't have any say in it. Which that's taking it a little bit too far. But you know, you understand where he's coming from. It's a theological kind of understanding. Oh yeah.
He's been in the walk since 1995, and he wasn't like, I met him out on the road, like raw middle place, and he wasn't like what we're doing, like internet, like, you know what I mean? He didn't find the walk through this order. So he used Yahweh and all that, and he was like,
Yeah. You'll find the people of that thought process, but I along with many don't subscribe to the fact that we're just like puppets. You know what I mean? We have to make a decision, a choice to follow after Him, right? And we see that. But continuing on with what we see over here, when we look at if we go down to verse 3 over here, I want to pay attention to, if we look at Matthew's version in 26:3, where it begins to talk about what we read with the elders and the chief priests and the scribes all coming together with Caiaphas, the priest, and they're making this plot to kill Yeshua, and they amongst themselves are saying that they don't want to do it during the feast of Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, because they understand how the people are all on his side. But if we go over to, I want to go over to Luke 22. I want to go over to Luke 22 and pay attention to what we see, what Luke adds to the equation. If we go to Luke 22 and read 2 through 8.
It says, and the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to kill him, for they feared the people. And Satan entered into Yehuda, and he was called a man from Kerioth, who was numbered among the 12. And he went and spoke with the chief priests and the captains, and how he might deliver him up to them. And they were glad and agreed to give him silver. And he promised that he was seeking on occasion to deliver him up to them away from the crowd. And the day of unleavened bread came, when the Pesach was to be slaughtered, and sent Kepha and Yohanan, saying, go and prepare the Pesach for us to eat. And they said to him, where do you wish us to prepare? And he said to them, see, as you enter into the city, a man.
Oh, yeah, you can stop right there. Sorry. All right, so in verse 3, it says that Satan entered into Judas. And so Judas goes and he is willing to conspire with the chief priests and the captains on how to deliver Yeshua up to them. And he says that he's going to make a way, away from the crowd, understanding the timing that he'll do the thing. Now again, so from verse 1 over here, scroll up to verse 1. Verse 1, it says that the festival draws near. This is the same account where Matthew 26, where it says it's 2 days away. And so while they're 2 days away from Pesach, they're 2 days away, Judas is ready to flip on his master.
Now this also makes sense according to the what are the people called the revolutionaries.
You talking about the Sicarii?
Sicarii, yeah. If he was like, well, he's about to die, so let's make this happen.
Yes.
Like
If you say that he was connected to them, who were kind of these revolutionaries, where he's thinking about things kind of from a carnal standpoint, he wants to put these things in action. I guess you could think about it in that way, but I think the only issue is that when we add verse 3 to the situation, like if you think about trying to do something that's righteous, even though that thing may be wrong, you're able to kind of justify it through the righteous end. But I think because we have verse 3, it kind of causes it to be all kind of wicked. Where it says that Satan entered into him, and then he went to these scribes and priests and captains to kind of begin to snitch. Now, from a rabbinic standpoint, they talk about the fact that they say that a person does not commit sin unless the spirit of folly enters into him. The spirit of folly enters into you and causes you to commit this irrational thing outside of the soundness of your mind. Let's go over to 2 Timothy. Let's look at 2 Timothy 3, 8 and 9. Because there's a certain thought process that, as it relates to certain sins, it's really necessary for you to be thinking about things irrationally outside of your rational mind when it comes to certain things. Read 2 Timothy 3, 8 through 9.
And as Yohanan and Mamar oppose Moshe, so do those also oppose the truth. Men of corrupt minds, found worthless concerning the belief, but they shall not go on further, for their folly shall be obvious to all, as also those men became.
Okay, very good. So these people who were at one time part of the faith have gotten to this place where they opposed Moses, and they also opposed the truth. They're called men of corrupt minds, and they're found worthless concerning the faith now. But they were at one point not that. But it says in verse 9 that their folly shall be obvious to all, and also that of those men became. So look at that word there, folly, verse 9, Greek 454, which it literally says there, stupidity. Stupidity. Right? And it's a compound word that means like no or without intellect. It literally means without intellect. So you're not actually functioning based on knowledge. It's not based on knowledge. If we go back to Judas, the things that he's doing can't be based on knowledge. He's seen too much to think that what he's actually doing could be right. I don't know how to put it in this category of him being kind of wanting to initiate some political uprisal or what have you. This is just all out betrayal on his part, and he's not operating on knowledge here. And again, Luke helps us when he says that Satan entered into him. He's not thinking right.
He got reprogrammed. Or he got, like the sleeper cell, he got activated.
Yes. Yes. Judas is tripping. All the way. And so, again, okay, so let's keep on going. Let's go back to Matthew. If we go to Matthew, and then again, so it talks about this thing that happens. And so we go according to the timeline in Matthew. It was 2 days before Passover. Yeshua makes this statement. Judas probably feels like, this is going to be a good time for me to flip. I'm going to go talk to these people and try to see how we can make this happen. And then so we go down to Matthew 26 and verse 6. We read where it talks about when Yeshua was in Bethany, the house of Simon the leper. And in verse 7, a woman. This is interesting because it don't say who the woman is. Just some woman. They're in Simon the leper's house, and then some woman is there, and she has this costly oil, and then she pours it on Yeshua's head. If we was to look at Mark 13, the same thing is true. It mentions that they're in Bethany, they're in Simon the leper's house, they're sitting around, and then some woman came having this costly oil and breaks the thing and pours it on his head. And the disciples, it's mentioned that they are they're arguing, they're displeased with what happened. This thing cost 300 denarii. We could have fed all these poor people if we would have sold this instead of it being wasted on the head of Yeshua. And so when you think about, first of all, 300 denarii is probably for a minimum wage person almost a year's wages. If you was just like a regular median, you're probably gonna make about a denarii per day. And so 300 is gonna get you probably through most of the year for one person. And so having this thing, this oil that was so costly, right? If you think about if you just was to think in our own terms, if you think about something that costs the amount of what a minimum wage worker would make in a whole year, it's still a lot. Like that's still something that's very costly, right? And so when we look at the Matthew, specifically Matthew and Mark, as they talk about it, first of all, there's a few things we want to take note of. First of all, they only just say a woman, like some woman. They don't say who it is. And the disciples really, let's see, Yeshua, verse 4 in Mark, some who were much displeased. So there was some unnamed people who were displeased by what he did. If we look at Matthew, verse 8 says his top ones, or the disciples, saw it. Unnamed disciples saw it, and they were displeased and said this was a waste. Like we really could have did something with this and fed the poor. All right, but what we want to do over here is go over to John. Let's go to John, because John helps us and gives us information that we don't have from Matthew or Mark or from Luke. Let's go to John 12. Let's read John 12, 1 through 8.
Accordingly, Yeshua 6 days before the Pesach came to Bethaniah, where Eleazar was, who had died, who had raised from the dead. So they made him a supper there, and Martha served, while Eleazar was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Miriam took a powder costly perfume of nard, anointed the feet of Yeshua, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Then one of his top ones, Yehuda of Periel, son of Shimeon, who was about to deliver him up, said, why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? And he said this not because he was concerned about the poor, but because he was a thief and he had the bag, and he used to take what was put in it. Yeshua then said, let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial. For the poor you have with you always, but me you do not have always. Okay,
very good. So when we look at John's account of what happened, there's some differences, right? Now, this thing that's happening here, according to John, this part that happens 6 days before Pesach. So this is going to be 4 days before Judas decides to go and flip on the master. After this thing happens. I don't know if this is the thing where he's like, I can't take this anymore. But this happens, like in time, this happens, and then when they get closer to Passover, he goes and conspires with the Sadducees. But again, so over in the other thing, it says that it tells us that they're in Bethany in Matthew and Mark. It tells us that they're in Bethany, but it says that they're at Simon the leper's house. So they're at Simon's the leper's house according to Matthew and Mark. John don't say that they're at Simon the leper's house, but it does say they're at a place where Eleazar is, and his sisters, or Martha at least, is serving. You know, she serves. That's what she does. Huh?
I said I want to go to her house.
Well, here we know that it unless Simon and Martha and Miriam and Eleazar all live in one place, it seems like according to the other two accounts, they're at Simon's the leper's house, but he's clearly being served by Martha at the house.
Now, when he would travel, did he go to Eleazar's house? Lazarus?
He hung out with them. Well, they're all brother and sister. They hang out together. And so I'm saying that it's easy for us to put these three accounts together and say, well, the other two say that they're at Simon the leper's house. He could still be being served by Martha at somebody else's house, with Eleazar being the one who's at the table with him. It is interesting when you look at the other accounts that Mark, Matthew, where they're saying a woman, or they're making the woman be, non-specific. But according to John's account, it's Mary. Now, the other thing is that when you think about this thing that's happening, there's another time that this happens earlier in time, where here it's clearly in close proximity to Passover. This happens again, I think it's in Luke, but it's early. It's like chapter 7. It's like the early part of his ministry. And the person that's named is also Mary, but I don't think Mary Magdalene is Mary of Bethany. There's a Mary Magdalene and there's a Mary from Bethany, and I don't know if those are the same person. But it is interesting that you have kind of closer to the beginning this kind of show of adoration towards Yeshua, not at the very beginning, but really close to the beginning. And then you have this same kind of a thing that happens, basically right at the end. And Yeshua tells you what this thing really kind of signifies. Kind of from, you know, I mean, I want to say spiritual, but it's almost literal though, because he's literally about to die in a few days. And so it has kind of this significance that goes with it. And so, you know, there are some variations where people try to say that this thing that happened in John 12 is not the same thing that's happening in Mark 14 and Matthew 26. I'm not of that school because of the fact that, okay, we have these extra things that happen, like the name of the person. It don't say in John anything about Simon the leper, but it does mention that they're in the right city. But the way that it ends is identical to the other thing in terms of disciples complaining about the same dollar amount, which to me, I feel like here is where we find out what the dollar amount is from Judas, the one who holds the money. Like, where did this number even come from? Lest it be from the guy who holds the money saying, look, we could have got three. I know what that is. That's such and such a whatever. That we could have got 300 denarii for that. But you have the same thing happening, and then Yeshua saying the exact same thing, where to me that makes this be the same situation.
It didn't happen twice.
No, especially not in, to me, I'm saying it didn't happen twice, not in that same proximity.
4 days.
Yeah.
I had a question. I had a question towards the woman pouring the expensive herb on Yahshua.
Could you talk up just a little bit? Just
Yeah, my question is, what relationship does she have with Yahshua that the disciples didn't discern that he was going to be married? Why did she understand more than they? Why did they not pick up
yeah.
that she was mourning for him before his death? Why were they not aware?
I think that it's interesting. John helps us to see things kind of from a spiritual perspective. In general, he does. And so here it's interesting that he's pointing out these specific things. And so when we see Miriam, who we know from previously, Miriam, Martha, Eleazar, they're really tight with Yeshua. When he's in town, he checks on his people. And there was such a thing that, you know, we learned kind of some of this where Eleazar, where he dies, and they're like, you know, this is your guy. Like, why won't you even just come in? You could have came early, and he wouldn't even have had to die. Like, this is one of his, like, they're from their home base is in Capernaum, but when they come to Jerusalem, which Bethany is close by, they be with them. And so you have a closeness that the three of them would have, Miriam, Martha, Eleazar, and Yeshua, I guess the four of them, that they will have with each other. They have a closeness. Now, the disciples, they should be closer than them all. They should be closer than them all. But we're also able to see that as many times as he talks to them about the fact of him going away, the fact of him having to die, even here with the seriousness of the time and what's getting ready to happen that he mentions, they still aren't seeing that. And then he hints to it before when he talks about the fact that, you have me now, but you're not going to really know, I'm paraphrasing, you're not going to really know how to act when you don't have me anymore. Because it's like they're living this life that's it's not real, really. Because they literally got Yeshua there with them.
You got the answer key.
Right. So they're taking this test of life and they already have the answers with them. So it's not real. And so, but Miriam though, who, although they all have a close relationship with Yeshua, she's able to there's some separation though. Where maybe she's able to, I'm not saying maybe, it's obvious. She has a greater spiritual discernment of what is, more so than the ones that's with him all the time. Which is interesting because when you think about what Yeshua says, he says in Mark, he says in Matthew, John says it too, but I feel like John is really the one who brings the most he does the story the most justice, because when it says, according to Mark and John, that what this woman has done shall be spoken of also to her remembrance. It says that in Matthew, it says that in Mark, but they didn't put the name in there. Just this woman, like they're at this private party and then some random woman comes in and does this thing and she does this thing that Yeshua said, remember this thing whenever you talk about the gospel, talk about this thing that she did. It's like they're not giving her the fullness of what Yeshua really said for them to do. But John does, because he lets it be known who it actually is. He says her name. And so I don't know the why, but what I do see is that she does have a better spiritual discernment about the weight of where they are at that moment, that he's about to be dead and we're not going to see him the way that we're seeing him right now anymore, because they don't really know how things is going to play out. But she at least understands that this is about to be it, like how we know it.
I just wanted to add, we know that Martha complained about her sitting at his feet, not doing anything. So she had a closer relationship. To me, I think she had a closer relationship than the others, because she cared more about being with him. So that's all I would add.
Yeah.
I was just curious if she's doing this, that maybe it has something to do with her being close, but was this a respectful thing after he brought her brother back to life. And this was the time to do it because you've seen in other scriptures. He told people, you didn't even give me water to wash it. And there was a custom of washing the feet and things like that. So I'm wondering if this wasn't her just showing respect to him with not just, it wasn't just that, this was oil and her hair.
Yeah.
That she was not only pouring over him, but she was also wiping his feet with her hair. So I'm just curious.
I think that probably it had to be some type of culmination of all of these things, but mostly understanding who Yeshua is really, and acting in a way that shows that she understood the time that it was. But I'm sure that all of these things had a part to play in her getting to that place of saying that, my brother was dead for 4 days and you brought him back to life. And ever since then, he's sitting right over here. Like it wasn't like he's alive. And so I think that when we see this over here, I think that it's important for us to, gain that bit of understanding that we get from what she did. Now, also with the instructions that Yeshua says in what we read in Matthew. Could you read again Matthew 26 and 13?
Matthew 26:13. Truly I say to you, whoever this good news is proclaimed in all the world, what this woman has done shall be spoken of also to her remembrance.
Now, to me, this is a very serious thing. And so it causes us really to think about the importance of what she did, but also kind of the characteristics that she exhibited when she did what she did. And, number one, again, something that we just mentioned earlier is the fact that there is a level of spiritual discernment that she exhibited that was greater even than the disciples. Like Yeshua got to tell them again that, this thing that she's doing, she kept this thing here for my burial. You're going to always have poor people. You're going to have plenty of opportunities to feed the poor. But you're not going to always have Yeshua with you just like this. And I'm saying most importantly, the fact that she's able to have this understanding that they don't have, like they didn't get it. Like he literally says to them that I'm going to be crucified. Like this, like they don't.
I don't think they understood.
Like, why wasn't there a talk of like a conversation that was had? Like, hold on, what you said? You said what now?
Crucified.
Yeah, what you mean?
It's like the difference between men and women now. She could feel it on an emotional.
Being more emotional about it.
That's why I was saying that she must have a more intense, like, relationship with Yeshua than the disciples because
I'm just gonna say different. I would say different. You know what I mean? I would say different. It was obviously different. I think what's interesting is when you think about the disciples, where Yeshua imparts the Spirit to them, so that they're able to go and do these things, perform these miracles, do these things in His name. But I think the other part is helping us to be able to understand that it's still, even though that happened, it's still necessary for Him to die and to go away and to send back the Spirit so the Spirit can actually dwell in those that believe. And so that it's more than just kind of this occasion of the Spirit on them. So I think that even though you have this close proximity that existed with the disciples, where you would think that they would have a particular relationship with Him that supersedes all others, it's obvious that, you know, there was something that was missing, where they need for what ends up happening to happen in order for them to get to that next level, where she, you know, she's ready right now. Right? She's ready right now. And you see, because of, you know, another thing that you see besides the spiritual discernment that she has, there is this great level of sacrifice that she exhibits with this action. With this very highly expensive thing that she does, that she totally dedicates to Yeshua all at once. That who knows how long it took for her to acquire this thing. I mean, maybe after her brother got raised from the dead, she went into her treasury and went and got it after that happened. I don't know, it don't say. But at some point, she put her chips together and had this very expensive oil that she never opened. She just opens it right here. She just broke the seal off of the thing just right here and uses it to anoint the master, knowing that his time is just about over. And so you see, again, this spiritual discernment. You see this immense sacrifice that she makes. And then also, you see this great exhibit of adoration and worship
That's right.
to Yeshua. Where she's at a place where she is not thinking about what's going on, like they're here to eat. Like they're there to have a meal. They're hanging out together, you know, they catching up on some things. And then she over here like doing all this. Like, come on, man, we trying to, like, this is what, like, they're like the disciples is led by Judas are kind of like they don't on any level understand what's going on over here. They're only just saying like, we could have did so much with this. And this is what you like when they see her doing what she's doing, they don't be like, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, he's about to be crucified. Like her actions don't initiate nothing in them. They just stay where they're at. But again, when you think about what Yeshua has to say as a result of what she did, I think it's more than remembering her for the act only, but what is exhibited in the act. Which again, you have this spiritual discernment. You have this great sacrifice. And you have this adoration and worship towards Yeshua for who he is. He's the king.
Yep.
She's literally treating him as the king, knowing that this thing that he's about to do is going to change everything.
Yeah, there's in her entire life, if she had kept that oil, there's nothing she can do better than what she just did.
Yes. It's almost like it was just predestined for her to get that. Maybe she didn't get it when Lazarus died. Remember maybe her grandma gave it to her and she been keeping it this whole time. Until just right now, this is what I got to do with this. This is why I've been keeping this thing this whole time.
I think it's just, I keep thinking about the woman part of it because, I mean, that's what he gave them to sacrifice herself for her children. And, I don't know, I just keep going back to that. She just had that gift of a woman that she was able to discern it. So it really wasn't from her, it's all praise to the Most High. We're predestined.
Yeah. Well, I think that, but Yeshua says to her remembrance, though. What this woman did shall also be spoken of whenever you talk about the gospel and proclaim it to all the world. Talk about her too. It might have something to do with why the other two gospels don't say whose name it is. Like who it actually is. It might have something to do with it. But I think instead of talking about why they didn't, I think the more important thing is why John did, and more so what things we're able to learn from what she actually did.
I mean, that's a lot of oil. I just looked it up. It's about almost 2 cups of oil. Like, it's a little exceeding. I mean, if I've seen people get anointed, like when they get ordained or something, and I'll be like, don't get the oil on the clothes, like, cause you're not gonna get that out. Like, I sometimes, I'll be like, wow, like, you just messed that outfit up. But a whole 2 cups of oil on his head is a lot. I would, think, dabbing or, like, a little back and forth, in our type of thinking, but it's just like what you just said. And you talk about the words, the adoration. It's like this thing that kind of goes above and beyond. You know what I mean? It's like it's not there. It's without measure. You're pouring out your whole heart. And so how can you pour out your whole heart if you are just ready to just spill a little bit out and then pull it back?
Yeah, she didn't hold nothing back. Now it's funny that you said on his head, because John said on the feet.
On his feet, yeah.
But the other one said the head though.
Yeah.
And so she made him pour the stuff on his head so much that it went all the way down to his feet. She emptied the whole thing out on him, like he was drenched in oil.
It's really a heavy smell.
Yeah, the whole place, the house was filled with the smell. Just how these kids get into the oils and be messing around with the oils, and the whole upstairs be smelling like oils. That's what she did, except for on Yeshua. His whole body. Like, this is what Yeshua is saying, and this is what one would do if they was preparing this dead body, because you know the dead body is going to start to stink when it decays, and they're going to put the fragrance. They just not going to just be like how you would be like just a little bit on his head, like you will really have the stuff all over the place.
Lather.
And so that's the idea, where this thing is basically her treasure
Amen.
that she had, that she broke open and gave all of it to the king, holding nothing back. And so I think, you know, what we're able to look at and understand where, you know, as it relates to Yeshua at this time, you know, what she did here, you know, helps us to understand that this is an all in kind of a thing. It's not where you just give in like a little bit. Like this, what I can afford to give you, Yeshua, is all you gonna get. That's not what she said. She gave all that she had for the king. She had the perfect understanding as to the timing of the situation. She understood the fact that yes, Pesach is coming, and you're the Pesach. Like she had to have had that perfect understanding of not only understanding that he was going away, but why he was going away. That's how she gets to that place, because she gets there with understanding and knowing that this has to happen for our good.
So I just, and this is like, so it's really for the benefit of Ari when I talk to the kids. Like, when we get ready for the feast days, it's kind of like just put it all out there, and then we'll figure out the rest later. You know what I mean? It's like, this is what we're gonna do. This is what has to be done. We're gonna put it out there, and we're gonna trust in God to provide. You know, and I see that as being part of how we're. You know, I'm not saying this is really just kind of an example towards peace, but how we're supposed to serve Him is putting our all forward. And then depending on him to kind of I don't want to say figure out all the details, but you know, all the physical things that gotta happen, he's going to be taken care of. You know.
Yeah.
So you know, we put our all into all the feast days. We put our all into every Sukkot, and you know, we've never had anything shut off, and we've never gone hungry. We never got, you know what I mean, like. There's never been a time of need after the feast he provides.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at the action of, of Miriam of Bethany, that it really was about her giving her all.
That's right.
Her giving her all to Yeshua. And, you know, I feel like that was all that she had. She didn't have anything else to give. Like, they were just regular people. They wasn't like some aristocrats who had, you know, whatever. You know, they was just regular people. She gave a lot. But it was all that she had to give, and it definitely shows as an example of how we too should be as it relates to the things that got to do with Yeshua and this walk and this life, where she's not sitting up here trying to figure out, you know, what she gonna do now she done got rid of her most expensive treasure. She just giving it to the master. For when you think about it, even from the way Yeshua is describing it, it has spiritual significance, but it kind of is like a practical situation too, because he's literally about to die. And all of that oil that got poured on him, they're probably underneath of all that he got on him. There probably was some remnants of that made it all the way over to that grave.
I don't know how he could have gotten it all the way up.
No, not when he got all of that poured on his head and it got all the way down to his feet. Like if I sit up there and, you know, put my oils in my beard and then wrap it up and leave it like that for a week, when I unwrap it, that stuff is still so soft and, like, you know what I mean, and got that moisture from when I put the stuff on a week ago. Now, and that's with going to work and doing all of this stuff throughout the time. Now, granted, you know, you talking about Yeshua, who probably has blood and sweat and tears and all of that stuff on him, but he never got washed after that. You know what I mean? So I'm saying that is possible. It's very possible that remnants of what she did lasted all the way until the grave. And so I'm just saying that, yes, it has this spiritual significance, but to a degree, it's probably some practical application over here as well. And so again, Yeshua points out the great significance. And so I think that it's just important for us to not only think about what she actually did, but the characteristics that go into what she did as well. All right. Does anybody have any last questions, comments about any of this?
Why did you put on his own body?
Well, I just said that. And Yeshua said it too. It was to anoint Yeshua's body for burial. She literally was preparing for, and again, if you think about it from her having this high level of spiritual discernment, if she's understanding what's about to happen, like how far is she seeing? Like, because she know he got to die. She know that he's doing this great work of redemption and atonement. She's so far ahead of the disciples in terms of this spiritual discernment. Do she know that? Do she know he raising up too?
Well, he raised her brother up. I think about that time pivot, if you did it before, you did it again.
Yeah. All right. All right, very good. All right, so if no one else has any thoughts, questions, or comments, I guess we'll go ahead and be done with talking about this for now. Y'all willing? Be back on next Shabbat to talk more about the words the master and also the weekly Torah portion. But for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom.